Hello and welcome to More Than a Game, a podcast dedicated to the Premier League, the A-League and more. Today on the show, is the A-League back to being more than a meme? Barcelona, quality finishing and goals galore suggest so. And should Jurgen and Ralph get the fat filter? I'm Colby and I'm joined today by Damo. How are you, Damo?
Good, mate. If you want any fat filters, send them my way. I think I'm the expert fat filterer at the moment.
You're the chief fat filter officer of More Than a Game, responsible for every fat filter listeners see on our social media. So
That's my role, my main role.
I think you'll have your work cut out for you with all of these fraudulent Premier League managers in the next couple of weeks, Damo, just getting found out left, right and centre. Big show today, though. We've got the Mariners, Newey and Raw revivals. United dropping points to Everton in Fergie time. Liverpool not being able to score at home, and Jose's being found out again. And will anyone drop enough points to keep Sheffield up? We've got listener questions, and later on we'll be joined by Andy and George to chat Premier League, plus our More Than a Game FPL Player of the Month award for Jan. So huge show. And we've just seen a bit of magic in the Mariners game that's led up to this podcast, but listeners will be wanting to know whether you're going to bring any more magic to your moments of the week or own goal, Damo.
Look, I really scoured the football world for any sort of magic this week, and I really struggled. The only thing I came up with was a quote from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer that said that Manchester United have finally got the magic back after they won 9-0 midweek. And we saw how that ended up this morning when they obviously, as you mentioned, drew 3-3 and threw a couple leads away. So I'm not sure if it's an own goal. Probably is an own goal. Ollie's saying that Man United have got their magic back, and it's not really back, is it?
It's a bloody struggle, I'll tell you what. I mean, own goal was a struggle for me this week. Normally, I've got too many. This week, I've got nothing. But my moment.
If you want me to reel some off,
yeah, go on. Give us your own goal. Let's start off with those.
Let's go with some own goal. So I think one of the biggest ones this week was Ajax, who admitted that they just completely forgot to register Sebastian Haller for their Europa League squad. Which is, I mean, if that doesn't sell Farmers League in one sentence, I don't know what does. And then I got another good one. And I think I put this in the group chat earlier this week, is the great grandson of Benito Mussolini signed for Lazio, which is ironically Serie A's historically right wing club. And he's only young, he's only a teenager, and I think the most ironic part of this story is that Romano Mussolini plays as a right winger, so it all fits the narrative.
How's he going to get any game time? I thought everyone at that club played right wing. Oh man, yeah, that's tough to beat. With the Ajax one, with Haller being left out of the squad. I mean, I've done that on FIFA like no end of times. Just like left, in career mode, you're going on to another match and just left the player out of my squad inexplicably, and then I get to make a sub and he's nowhere to be seen. So I mean,
he wasn't just left out of one match day squad. He was left out of like the registration period. He can't actually play in the Europa League at all. They completely forgot to register him. So anytime they play in Europe, he's just got to sit at home now.
That's so cooked. Like we'd be getting stuck into A-League clubs if they did something like that, being like, oh, come on, guys, like, this is so unprofessional and all the rest of it. But these guys are like, champions of Europe once upon a time, powerhouse club. They're no two-bit outfit. I mean, I know we like to say the Eredivisie and French leagues are a bit of a farmers league sometimes, but geez, come on, you'd expect more from Ajax, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Quick moment of the week, though, from me. I mean, it's just the Barcelona. Barcelona are back. I'm saying it. We've been able to get excited for games for the first time in quite a few years. The style of football is very attractive. We're scoring a lot of goals. It's, absolute scenes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it when we cover the Brisbane victory game.
Yeah. Plenty more on that later. But we do have another listener question this week. We put out a question on Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit for a bit of a discussion this week. And this week the question was, what can you put your finger on as to why this season is so entertaining and unpredictable? And can you remember a better start to an A-League season ever? And this, Damo, this got a lot of responses. I'm sure you've seen them all come in, and I've listed a bunch of them here. But there's a couple of themes that came through from them. And the first one is just the youth. Like listeners gave a lot of reasons for that, like salary cap and COVID reasons. Lachlan Perry on Twitter just said youth in all caps. Felvy Mups on Twitter said giving the young lads a chance. Neuenhoff, Wenzel Halls, Qual, D'Agostino, Yule, Brimmer, Wood, etc. They all want to prove themselves and to play well, and it's great. And almost every young player is having a breakout season.
A quote from More Than Game Zone, Tommy C says, "Young players like Yule." I don't know if that's G up or this wants to be heard.
I thought that was funny because we already had like 2 responses saying Yule, and then Tommy just thought we would get in there as well. But FC, I like this one on Reddit. He put it well, saying, or he or she put it well, saying lots of teams unbalanced by cap reduction related departures. Plus, kids getting more game time has meant that the worst teams aren't falling behind and the best teams aren't pulling out in front as much. So FC seems to think that this COVID period and youth breakout has been a bit of an equalizer for the league.
Yeah, and I think for me, that's probably, in answering the question about how it's been so unpredictable, is the league seems a far more flat line than it ever has for me, probably since, the 3rd, 4th, 5th seasons of the A-League, where there wasn't really the big clubs and the small clubs around that kind of time. It seems like everyone's on a level playing field this year, and that's what makes it so exciting for me.
Yeah, I mean, it like feeling like anyone could pretty much win on their day is like exactly what you want in any league. And it's so far so good. It looks like we're really getting that. Greened it 42 on Reddit sort of echoed that sentiment, saying the salary cap reduction has forced out a lot of A-League journeymen and forced clubs to develop youth, and this has energized the comp, leading to fast-paced, unpredictable, and entertaining games. And it would be a shame if we reverted back. So yeah, you'd really hope that after everyone's seen, this season, if it continues the way it is, once things open up a lot more, we sort of ditch the journeyman and stick with this sort of style because it's really working. Some other people commented on the later start to the season, so a couple of months later than usual. Stanny CFC on Twitter says, less games in stupid heat and more young players. And Ash says football in the summer, winky face. So, I mean, I guess we'll get to the coveted promised land of A-League winter seasons soon enough. But maybe the summer season, a bit later on has something to do with it. And yeah, go on.
No, you're right.
Lee Broxham facts says that he feels like every team doesn't really have a solid defensive midfielder bunch. So, I mean, I guess he's getting at a lack of defending being great for the excitement in the league this season.
Is he speaking on behalf of Melbourne Victory or on behalf of the A-League? Because I feel like it's a very Melbourne Victory specific comment.
I think he's probably speaking about what he knows. There's a few young, good defensive midfielders out there, like your Edmonds and your Dorigos and some of those kind of guys. They
Neuenhoffs and
yeah, but there is a distinct lack of defending in some of the games we've seen. And a couple of other people commented on what I would call the bellwether clubs of the A-League, and the Mariners are one of them. Jack McDonald on Facebook says the Mariners are going well. Simple. And Positive About Stuff on Reddit says the swing in quality away from recently successful towards less recently successful teams, except Sydney for the moment. And he loves that Central Coast is smashing it and Newey are giving it a red hot crack.
Yeah, I thought this was a really interesting comment because I was looking back at history of A-League winners and who was at the top of the league, and the A-League has seemed kind of secular in that, the first couple of seasons it was Sydney, Adelaide, Melbourne. They were the teams that were unbeatable, and then they kind of dropped off. And it seems that way when the salary cap, you get too many players that want too much money, and all of a sudden you've got to kind of do a reshuffle and a rebuild, and those teams dropped off, and the place was taken by Central Coast, Brisbane, Newcastle. And then that kind of circled away again, and Sydney, Victory came back, and that's kind of trended back to where we are now, where we're seeing those per se smaller clubs doing well again.
Yeah, it was looking like for a while it wasn't going to change, though. I was worried that it was just going to be Sydney and Melbourne Victory just running away with it for years, and it was almost getting like I don't want to watch Sydney, win 16 titles in a row or something like that. Like, it's just not good for any league to have that, and I think that's just such a huge part to do with it. Like, traditionally successful clubs like the Roar and the Mariners, having a good season could be, you couldn't get a better thing for the league, I don't think, in terms of excitement and unpredictability. And you can always send us your questions, comments, or hot takes into mtagpodcast@gmail.com or on any of our social media links. Links to all of those in the show notes. Coming up next, though, the Bunnings A-League Match Week 7. So it was a wild first half at Dolphins, which saw 6 goals for just the 6th time in A-League history as the Roar put the Vuck to the sword. Damo, you watched this one live, but you said in the group chat you managed to miss 5 of the goals, all of in the first half. First of all, what were you doing?
So I was very time constrained yesterday, and I thought I'd squeeze in a quick run at 4:30, so I'd be home by 5. I went a little bit slower than anticipated, and I got home at 1 minute or 2 minutes past 5, and I had to have a quick shower. So I dipped in, turned the game on, watched a couple of minutes, had a shower, came back, and it was 3-1. So that wasn't very fun. And then had to do a quick run to the toilet and grab a drink, and I came back and it was 4-1. So the game had been going for, it was at 34 minutes, and I think I'd watched about 15, 20 minutes of the game, and I'd missed 5 goals. So wasn't my finest moment, but I did see the rest of the goals, so that was good enough for me.
You did get tweeted by the Brisbane Roar official account for your screenshotted group chat saying that you've missed all 5 goals. So, that's something at least. But have you caught up with them now?
I did. I watched all the goals, and some of them were brilliant. And I think we've got a note on here that says, "Are Brisbane the real deal?" And I think just the pure confidence that's just flowing through that team at the moment. You don't score goals individually, team play wise, that they scored without just having this air of confidence around the club and around the playing group. I think goals like that just don't come if there's not confidence around the team.
Yeah, that's right. And Brisbane are 4 from 5 now in terms of wins. They've got games in hand on the Mariners, and so Brisbane are sitting top of the table on goal difference at the moment. So, it's looking like early season, we know, but like the way they're playing and the consistency they're showing, it's looking like they very well could be. And the Golden Boot race as well could be pretty spicy this season, as we've seen as well. Dylan Wenzel-Halls and Alu Kuol tied for the Golden Boot race, both with 5 goals. 5 goals in 5 appearances for Dill and 5 in 7 for Alu. Damo, what do you reckon about this Golden Boot race? Do we want to revise our early call on Jamie McLaren or?
Yeah, Jamie McLaren seemed the obvious option because he's the Socceroos number 9. But my boy Alu Kuol is on fire, and Dylan Wenzel-Halls is doing his thing. He's scoring goals like he did in the Queensland NPL, and don't forget that Nick D'Agostino, I think, is on 4 as well, just behind them. So we've got three players who are all the top of the Golden Boot standings in the A-League, who are all vying for the spot in the Olyroos, while we've got Jamie McLaren and Tommy Urich and Mitchell Duke, who are all trying to get themselves in contention for the Socceroos number 9 spot, who really haven't done anything.
Yeah, so there's lots of incentive. I mean, aside from just winning the Golden Boot, like there's lots of incentive for all of these players to give it a red hot go this season, and it looks like the trend's only going to continue. Just seeing games full of goals, and long may it continue. Go on.
I was just going to say I had a good interview with there was a good interview with Ali Kuol after the Mariners game just earlier, and Robbie Slater tried to get him to say that he wanted to commit to Australia and wanted to be part of the Olyroos selection, and Ali Kuol kind of brushed him off and saying, I don't really care. Well, it's not that I don't care. It's just anyone who offers me international football, I'm going to take it. I'd be happy to play for Australia, but they've got to come knocking first, essentially, is what he said.
I dare say if he keeps this form up, he'll be in line for an Olyroos call up, assuming the Olyroos play any games this year.
Yeah, that's right.
There's an Olympics that's supposed to happen, but I don't think anybody thinks that it's going to happen, aside from the organising committee of the Olympics who are desperate for it to happen. But I don't think anyone else really thinks that this is going ahead. And we should say a word about the VUC in this game. We've been known to lay the boot into them. We need a bit more balance on the pod, but let's just talk about their form. And they've shipped a lot of goals. They've lost a lot of games. They're sitting rock bottom. I didn't see VUC Twitter after this, but are they going to start demanding that Brebs gets sacked, or should he be given more time? And who's responsible for this run of bad form, Damo?
Look, I read a good comment on Twitter that I couldn't actually find when I was thinking about this and trying to bring it up, that this current form of Melbourne Victory is a reflection of where the club, backroom staff, and their approach to Melbourne Victory's like makeup since about halfway through last season, when things started to go poorly, and the club kind of said, all right, well, we're going to cut some costs. We're going to bring in a manager that's already at the club. We're not going to bring in big players like we always have. And they've kind of cut costs everywhere and half-assed a lot of things that they haven't for many, many years. And I mean, their form is essentially a reflection of how the backroom staff and the committee at the club have tried to organize the club. It's all over the place.
So basically, the club have sold the manager and the playing group a bit short.
Yeah, I think that's an easy way to put it. Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, obviously, the manager has to take some level of responsibility. But I mean, yeah, with that kind of investment, I guess, for the season, with a club like Melbourne Victory, who normally by A-League standards bring in the big guns and really push the boat out every season. This is a bit of a different one for them, and especially after last season, the bad season they had. It looks like it's going to be another one, but yeah, for different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question about Brebner, I think Victory don't really have an option. I think they've got to keep him around, because what's the benefit in sacking Brebner at the moment and bringing in a new manager into a role where he's probably going to finish last or second or third last anyway? You may as well let Brebner ride it out and then completely refresh.
It would be absolutely ridiculous to get rid of him. And I mean, the question really only comes from, a response to some pretty reactionary VUC fans that I've sort of seen on Twitter blowing up about this. I mean, obviously with the recent success that the club's had, there's a lot of fans of the club who aren't too used to losing like this, and in the manner of some of these losses either. So, fair bit of reactionary stuff on Twitter from VUC fans. Let's move on though. A lot of A-League games to cover this week. We said going into this that we were only going to cover like the top 2 or 3 games and then just sort of leave the rest. But I think we're going to end up talking about just about all of the football, at least from the weekend, because it's just been so good. But we have to talk about Mariners and the Woo. So after a big come-from-behind win over Melbourne City midweek and Matty Simon's big 200 for the club, the Mariners have gone and done it again, coming from behind twice in this game to beat the Woo at home, thanks in large part to Alu Kuol. Damo, what's the Mariners' ceiling this season?
Oh, look, I'm still hesitant to say that they'll be competing for the title. I still And, I mean, this is based on no statistical evidence or anything. This is just, a whim, a feeling that I've got that I don't think they'll be able to last the full season at this kind of level. A lot of the wins they've come from behind, which is good now, but later on in the season when it gets a bit of a grind and you're going behind after half an hour, have you really got it in you to come back and get 3 points every game? Something's got to change. They've got to go ahead and got to hold leads, which they haven't been doing.
Yeah, and what you said there, it's sort of a bit of a feeling, and it's like if you're doing tipping comps, I always find like it's the feeling you get when you're looking ahead to the fixture and you're like, the Mariners, can I trust them? Can I take them seriously? Do I think they're going to get points this weekend? And I found myself like on a sort of teetering on a knife's edge, going, oh, I think they might be able to get it, but I don't have full faith in them yet. And I guess, I mean, surely the day would be coming soon that we're going to have to consider them a serious team again.
Yeah, but this could be one of those cases of like Leicester when they won the Premier League years ago, where it was, even in October and November, people are saying, oh yeah, they're going to fall off, and then every week for the next 25 weeks, people are saying, oh, they're going to fall off, oh, they're going to fall off, it's inevitable, it's inevitable. I mean, I don't think it'll be a situation like that with the Mariners, but who knows? The Mariners could just keep winning games. And if Matt Syme's got anything to say about it, he thinks they can win away from home as well. Because, I mean, that's another point to make, is that all of their wins and all of their form has come at home at the moment. So it's different traveling away from home and getting points, particularly going to difficult venues like Brisbane and Redcliffe, like Perth. Melbourne's always a hard place to go to against any team you play. These are tough games and tough away trips.
It's funny you should bring in the Leicester comparison to the Mariners season, because I was actually having a conversation. Friend of the pod, Matt Olsen, got into my DMs during the week after the Melbourne City Mariners game, and was sort of drawing the comparison, saying it's reminiscent of Leicester, saying they were only aiming for 40 points the year they won the league. Given their performances and results so far, there's a bit of a comparison to be made with the Mariners. And De Silva was coming out after that City game saying, oh, look, we're only aiming for sixth. We think that that's pretty much the best we can do, or something to that effect. But he basically drew that same comparison as well, with everyone sort of downplaying it and just being like, yeah, we're going to go hard and go for sixth, which every A-League club says. But yeah, funny you should say that as well.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of win-win for the Mariners at the moment, right? Because there's nothing expected of them. And I'm pretty sure every single one of us on the pod here predicted them to finish either last or second last. So anything better than that is a bonus. So there's no expectation of them to continue this form. So there's no pressure on them to continue this form. So as long as they keep winning, everyone just keeps going, oh, this is fun. There's no pressure on them to keep going.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it is their best start to the season since 12-13, which we just heard on the coverage of the game. And yeah, look, I really hope they make finals, and it's so good to see them winning games again, especially at home with the crowd. And yeah, you just absolutely love to see it. They're just one of those clubs that I think everyone has a bit of a soft spot for, given their history.
Yep.
The South by Southwest Derby, I don't know if we're calling it that still, but MacArthur and Western Sydney Wanderers has produced what a lot of people are calling a bit of a classic. But the Wanderers grabbed a point on the road despite going behind twice. A team that many pundits picked to be challenging this season, the Mac Bulls, they haven't got off to a flying start, Damo. 2 wins, 2 losses, and 2 draws. Are they overhyped?
I think on the main, yes. And I think if we go back to our season predictions, 1 or 2 of us, mentioned the fact that the McBulls might struggle to make the finals, and it turned a couple of heads from other people on the pod, thinking, oh, really? Everyone else is, expecting them to do well. And I think, yeah, on paper, the team looks really good, but like we made points previously, they've only been together a couple of months, and, being at a brand new club is a tough place to build something. So yes, I think they're overhyped, and I think both individual players are overhyped. The team as a whole are overhyped. Yeah, I think that they will be fighting for a final spot.
fighting, but maybe not winning. Scott, Mr. Worldwide on Twitter agrees with you, Damo. He says he thinks they'll struggle to make the top 6 this season. But a moment in this, or a couple of moments in this game that we should talk about, because they got a lot of people around the world talking, was the FIFA time, FIFA-esque goal mouth scramble and Keanu Baxter's scorpion kick assist. They've been doing the rounds overseas, and just wanted to ask you, because we've got a listener question. Considering the rising popularity, this comes from A-League Villa on Twitter. They say, considering the rising popularity of the A-League overseas, and he says that Bacchus assist has plus 1 million views on social media globally. Should the APL focus on advertising blitz in these areas? I think he's asking, should we be pushing overseas marketing more?
Oh, look, it's a difficult question, right? Because, primarily the goal is to build the game and the supporting base in Australia. That's where the big TV money is going to come from. That's where the support's going to come from, and the growth of the game's going to come from. If people internationally watch it and recognize it through social media posts and social media marketing and engagement that way, then that's a great thing. But I don't think the league or the governing body as a whole should make that a priority to market the game to international people. It's difficult to market a league that is at a certain level, that can't get above a certain level, and market it to a global audience that have got leagues that are a far greater level.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point about, like, it's not the people overseas that are going to be the bums on seats, but I think maybe the conversation does shift slightly if and when the A-League sort of develops its own, or gets its own rights to its streaming and all the rest of that kind of stuff, and it can basically license itself out, and there is feasibly money to be made somehow in sort of selling the broadcast rights itself overseas. So maybe there is, because I know obviously there's a bit of a cult following of the A-League in parts of the US and the UK and weird parts of the Middle East, like betting communities that are commenting on every time the A-League posts that tweet where it has like all the time zones. Everyone's saying like, what about all these places like in the Middle East that come up in the comments? And so I mean, there's clearly followings. I don't know always for what reason, whether they're watching the games or they're just like sports betting, not sure. But there is followings overseas, and it's reflected in our listenership as well. We've got a portion of our listeners that are based in the UK and based in the US as well. So not just Australians that are following along with our league.
Yeah, and I mean these posts that have been making those big views worldwide. I mean they were pretty extraordinary kind of incidents. The goal mouth scramble that was a very FIFA-esque, and I think the A-League official post said this is how controllers get broken, and Tommy C sent out a tweet live during the game saying that's real FIFA kind of shit or something like that, and it really was. It just didn't seem like, if that happened on FIFA, you lament the game for being so fake and I hate this game. That would never happen in real life.
Well, if the opposition on FIFA got a scorpion kick and then a headed goal, like I'd be throwing my controller across the room. I'd be like, that's bullshit. That doesn't happen.
I mean, they're both like one in a season kind of occurrences, and they happened within 5 minutes of each other in the same game for the same team as well.
I actually think Cox's reaction and finish with that header was very underrated, because all the attention went to Keanu Bacchus, but it was
he just threw a leg at it.
A split, just threw his leg out at it, but it was Cox that actually had to finish it, and he had like a split second to react, and not only does he get it down, but he directs it down into the bottom corner as well. I think that was a fantastic finish. It was really underrated. A few other observations from this one. The Dorans goal that caught Federici off his line, big shades of Socceroos friendly against Greece areas there. I remember a bunch of us, because that was in Melbourne a couple of years ago, just before Ange Postecoglou left the Rouge job, and Federici was playing in this game, and Postecoglou had instructed him to hold a very high line, and he got lobbed from before halfway, like 60 meters out from goal or something like that. So this wasn't as much, but it was just funny that it happened to the poor bloke again. He's probably only just gotten over that other one.
I mean, The first comment I made is, what on earth is Federici doing? Because you watch that back, and as soon as that ball's lost, and Dorrans is breaking, it's like 20 meters into his own half. Federici takes a few steps forward, and then he changes his mind, and he just starts like jogging, backtracking backwards, running backwards. If I'm the goalkeeper, I'm like turning around
Just
and
sprinting.
absolutely legging it back to the line, and I'm getting there as quick as I can while keeping an eye over my shoulder what's going on. I'm not like jogging back going, oh yeah, what's he going to do? Oh shit, he's lobbed me, And I think one of the funniest parts is he was still like 30 yards out, and he tried to get a hand to it out like 20 yards outside of his own box.
Unbelievable. Maybe he'll learn his lesson. Maybe he won't. I don't know. Federici plays by his own rules, I think.
Good shot stopper, but maybe should stay a little bit closer to his line.
Yeah. He's sort of like a slightly better version of Jamie Young, I reckon. Like that's
Yeah.
Same kind of build, same kind of shot stopping, but they all have like they've both got like something dumb in them, like every now and again.
Yeah, good comparison.
Newey and City, Damo. City have gone down to both of last year's bottom two this week. First the Mariners, and tonight going down 1-0 to Newey thanks to a first half goal from Valentino Yule. Who were we more wrong about, Newey or City, in our preseason predictions?
I mean, I was really high on City and really low on Newcastle. So I said Newcastle were going to finish bottom, and I also said City were going to finish second and win the grand final. And I think I put a question. I don't know how to answer your question. It's probably a bit of both.
We were wrong both. I think the answer is both. But yeah, you did. You put a couple of questions out, Damo. So why don't you go on with those?
Yeah, I put a couple of questions out on Twitter, I think, and the first one was have City been overrated from the start, or are they just misfiring? Are they still a good side that just aren't playing well, or did everyone expect too much of them? And I think we got a few good comments that were there's a bit of both, and people saying, particularly City fans saying to us that I think a lot of the expectation and pressure came from outside the club. If you had asked the players themselves or the City fans themselves, then they wouldn't have expected the success that everyone else had projected for them. I mean, they're a team with a coach in their first year. They're a team that have sort of trying to rebuild something, and a few new players have come in, and they didn't expect to win the league or be up there, but I'm sure they would have hoped. But I think it's probably a bit of both. They're both really underperforming, and they're obviously missing a boot, and I think there was a bit too much expected of them.
Yeah, I think that's right. Probably overrated, I would have to say. And given those comments from a lot of the City fans that we had on that question when you put it out on Twitter, but I think huge part needs to go to that first time manager. And I actually think that Mombert's had them just, really, really firing. And I think we're really clearly seeing, we've got the ABA experiment. We had City before Mombert's. Okay, that was their level. When Mombert's came in, their level went up. When he left, their City went down. Their level went, has dipped back down again. So I think we can sort of see what the change was there.
Look, and I think Mombert's had a very clear identity and style of how he wanted to play. And we had a good comment from Matt F on Twitter that said they don't seem to have any plans with the ball. It's hard to see what style they're striving to play. They look very mediocre, and Jamie McLaren isn't getting any supply of the ball whatsoever, which I think really sums up watching City. And as a City fan, it must be so frustrating because to have the same playing group that played so well last year that kind of look a little bit lost so far this year.
Yeah, and super frustrating because when Macca does get that supply, he scores goals. So, you've got this guy up there that is going to score goals when given the opportunity, and just to have him being starved up there is not great. You also asked, can City really be considered to be one of the league's big clubs? And we had a few interesting responses on that. And it was, they were really about, like, they sort of centered around City not having won anything yet. They've won the FFA Cup, but they haven't won the league yet, and they probably can't be considered to be a big club until they've at least won the league. and at least until the investment in them starts to reflect the backing, because I guess everyone started to consider them a big club when the City Group took over, but really the City Group haven't put the investment into them that we would have expected to sort of match up with that big backing.
Yeah, and yeah, I think a lot of the comments said that that perception stems from the investment from the City Football Group, and I thought I kind of posed this question because Matt Simon during the week in the lead up to the Melbourne City game said that they're a big club and we're looking to get a scalp over a big club, and the fact that other players from other teams are looking at Melbourne City as a big club. The perception from the outside is that there is more expected of them than they do win, but they really haven't won anything.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to wait and see with how the rest of the season goes for City. They've played 5 so far. They're sitting 8th. So maybe can't get too concerned yet, but they have lost 4 of their last 5. So they've got a long way to go to sort of get back to the level. And it's really in the performances, I think, that they need to really start lifting, and then the results will follow. Last game of the round that we'll cover was Adelaide and Perth from Friday night. I don't really want to talk too much about the game, but I just want to talk about this Mork versus Kilkenny. I'm all about this. So if you didn't see this, Mork, after scoring in the first half, halftime playing at City, basically just shit canning him, and apparently asked for the interview to trash his ex-teammate. And then Kilkenny had Mork's comments put to him after the game, after Kilkenny had been quite influential in the win, and saying maybe Mork should write that in his diary instead of saying things out on the pitch. Damo, what did you make of this whole shenanigans?
I think Stefan Mork probably feels like a bit of an idiot after all of this. And I think Kilkenny, he came off looking a little bit smug because it's easy in hindsight to kind of shoot down someone's comments. But I mean, he did put it pretty blatantly that I played at City for a year and a half. I got player of the season, the full season I played there. And then I had a falling out with the manager who didn't like me and sent me somewhere else. So he's pretty spot on about that. And I don't really know. Stefan Mork someone must have said something to him during the first half, and he was a little bit grumpy, and he probably should have held his tongue a bit at halftime.
It's like a fight that you sort of want both people to lose. Like,
yeah,
like they're
definitely
both thoroughly unlikable blokes. But do you think people don't give Kilkenny enough respect? Do you think that's a bit of a wider theme?
Oh, in some ways. I think people respect who Kilkenny is as a player and respect his abilities, but I think, like you said, he's a bit of an unlikable guy and doesn't really get people on side. He's got a good playing career, and he's played internationally. He's played at nearly every level of the game in England. So, I mean, people respect his career and the football that he's played, but I mean, people don't like him.
And I mean, this all came about from like a halftime interview. And I haven't seen this in too many other leagues, this like where they all get a player mic'd up at halftime. Is this a bit of an A-League innovation? And what do you think? Do you like it? Do you like the players coming and just speaking their mind at halftime?
I think they started doing this last year, and they were doing it, holding a mic as they were walking off together towards a tunnel. And this year it's become far more prominent because they can't actually just like hold a microphone under someone's face. They have to pull someone aside, put the big headphones on them, and get them to stand there and do an interview. I don't understand it. If I was a player, it's the last thing I'd be want to do is do an interview at halftime. The A-League's obviously trying to find something, and look, they get stories and narratives out of games like the Mork versus Kilkenny thing. So next time Adelaide play Perth is a great selling point for the game.
Yeah, I actually really like it for that reason. Like, all it takes is a smart producer to sort of ask the right questions of a player at halftime, and you can have that continue at full time with another player or the same player or whatever. And the player doesn't have time to overthink it and get their media training sort of hat back on, and it's halftime, you've just run off the pitch. Like they're not going to necessarily be be sharpened up and just giving like flat bat answers. So yeah, I quite like it for that reason. Okay, well let's take a quick break, and then we will come back for match days 22 and 23 of the Premier League. Just trying to add G-Man to the pod.
Fellas,
Here he is.
How are you, mate?
good. It's happening.
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Good. It's just started snowing again here. Hang on, I'll see if I can.
Well, your screen's blank at the moment.
Oh, thought that was only me.
This is gonna take a good amount of editing, but you know we've got the technology, so that's fine. But we can't see you at all.
Little hiccup. Here he is.
G-Man.
Can you see me?
No.
Hang on. Usually take 3 goes. It's take 3 goes. Hang on.
We can hear you though.
Yeah,
More than a game. Boomer areas.
Exactly right.
Is Andy joining? No.
Knowing G-Man, he'll just have the little thing over his camera just slid over and he just didn't realize.
I think they're both dialing in separately today as well. So this is just we've just added some real technological complications to a live stream.
How good. He's back.
Yeah, still no picture though.
Nah.
No, we can hear you.
That's fine, G-Man. The
We might
good
just
people
go with
on
audio.
YouTube will just have to go with audio.
Yeah. Hang on.
Is Andy on the way?
Better than looking at that COVID haircut anyway, G-Man.
Andy should be. He's not here. He's at his missus's place.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case.
So hang on. Message him.
That's fine. We might just roll on, and if he joins, he joins.
1 sec. All right, fellas, hang on.
Fuck no.
Plenty of games to cover. 2 rounds of the Premier League.
Not much to say on each, though.
No.
No dice.
No,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Tried all my tricks.
All good.
Let's
Get going.
Let's keep going.
Power ahead with the audio only.
Power through. If we get Andy, we get Andy. All right. 12 goals in 2 games this week, and just 4 points to show for it for Manchester United. United were up 2-0 at halftime and dominating the first half against Everton. As we welcome George into the pod, George, how did United let this lead slip twice here?
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea. This is the best they've played, I think, all season, and yet they couldn't they couldn't concentrate for like the last 2 minutes of the game, and obviously when they were up as well, they were cruising at halftime. So I don't know what Ollie said in the halftime talk, but the first 10 minutes of the second half, they bottled it. They got another lucky goal, and then they blew it again in the last minute. So it's just a sign of a team that are not ready to be champions, I guess.
Couldn't have said it better.
I put out a good tweet this morning. The irony that Man United dropped points at home in Fergie time was the best part of the day.
Yeah, it was so good.
I think there was an Opta stat, boys. It's the second time in Premier League history that United have let a home game slip by 2 goals leading at halftime and failed to win. So it's a big result. But I mean, it really all came down to that last kick of the game, Maguire playing on Dominic Calvert-Lewin for the equaliser. Maguire hasn't been the same since Greece.
Yeah.
George, do United need an upgrade? And
Well, I'm just a bit worried about where he's going to. Is he going to go overseas before the Euros? Is he going to go somewhere else? So just
Cyprus.
yeah, maybe. But it just as long as does he need to get arrested again to go back to his old form, or does he? Maybe he should just try
How
some
do they reset him?
philanthropy or something. Do some community service somewhere. Help out with the vaccines. Help out with the vaccines here.
Get some school kids some lunches.
Yeah. Just go
we
work.
We really need to work out how to rehab Harry.
Yeah. He's absolutely lost it. So yeah, and that last minute free kick, the whole United team stepped up, and Harry just stayed there, and they were like playing 4 Everton guys on. So it was pretty.
He played
pretty
the whole
crazy.
team on.
Yeah. So there was actually some chat here about De Gea should have come out and sort of tried to squash it, but I don't know about that one. It would. Yeah, it probably would have ended up with him missing the ball and Calvert-Lewin sticking it in an empty net. So I don't blame De Gea for that one actually.
And I think with the high line, it's not really for De Gea to step up, is it?
No, exactly right. I mean, he didn't have his best game either. But speaking of goalkeepers, who was Everton's sub keeper? Robin Olsen. Gee whiz. He got a couple of assists, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right. We've just been joined by Andy, finally making his way onto the pod. How are you, Andy?
He's on mute. Gee whiz.
There
we go.
Fancy that. I got muted as well. Jesus. Sorry, guys. I can't see George's George on screen.
None of us can.
None of us can, Andy. This is gonna be some fine YouTube. Like, I might actually have to edit the YouTube stream this week. So
can you edit it live? That's the question.
No, you can't. So
can we just check? Did he disclose that he got a haircut yesterday? Is that why the screen's fucked out?
Where's he gone now?
And George has dropped out.
Andy,
we're just talking about the United Everton game, Andy. Talking about Maguire playing the whole team on, and basically both keepers giving a few assists tonight. But what did you make of this one, and what did you make of United basically scoring 12 goals in 2 games and only having 4 points to show for it?
Well, you've summed it up pretty well. Maguire certainly made the case for himself to join Dean Smith's Sunday League side. That was some of the most unique sort of defensive action I've seen. United, look, all I'll say is, like, it's lovely to see fans get brought back to earth. I think this is just a fair reflection of where that team is at. They are on their day good, and they can score goals, but the results, I think, are going to level out for them. In weird season games in quick succession, where the table's not necessarily reflective of how good teams are, I think we'll see United drop back over the next couple of rounds.
And we should praise United though, boys. The 9-0 Southampton midweek. It's 2 games old now, but it bears commenting on because of the 9 goals. United absolutely putting Southampton to the sword. And they beat what's in front of them. That's what they needed to do. They needed to put the foot down. But I mean, like, Southampton, firstly, Yankovic, what are you thinking making that challenge?
Weird Al Yankovic.
Weird Al Yankovic.
Now, I thought it was quite funny that only about 4 days before this game, which was his starting debut, he had actually come out in the media and said that he actually wanted to leave Southampton, gets his first ever start in the Premier League and gets sent off after 80 seconds. So if he wanted to leave, then he's really chosen the back door, or the front door rather. He's walking right out.
Yeah, can you think of a better, like, self-destruction than that?
I think he should have just, like, gone via the changing rooms that game, like taking his boots off and just, like, got in his car and just left the stadium.
Left his kit in the change room and just gone home.
Just taking the wash bag and, like, see you blokes later. Yeah.
And just on Ralph, boys, just on a more serious note, like this is the second 9-0 now for Ralph Hasenhüttl. I don't know whether that's been talked about too much, but I mean, surely, like, you know, you go down to 10 men in the first 2 minutes of the game. You take one of your strikers off and you put a defender on and you just keep it tight, but you can't be conceding 9 goals twice in a tenure, in a coach's tenure, surely.
And yeah, see back-to-back seasons. On one hand, I agree that looks bad. On the other, I go like, this is a game that like stands out in the season against all their other performances when they've otherwise played well. And after sort of 5 goals against 10 men, like you either have like a lot to comment on, or like basically the game doesn't bear commenting because like by now the game's gone and everyone's heads are gone, and like the difference between losing 5-0 and 9-0, other than being 4 goals, is like you got hammered either way. It doesn't.
Did you boys see? Did you see the comment from Hasenhüttl after the game about when he was asked about his 2 9-0 losses? He said, it's definitely different than last time because last time we were definitely a shit team. Sorry I said this, but we had no identity and we were wobbling around back then. It's like, we just lost 9-0. How can you say you were shit then?
If you were shit then and you lost 9-0 now, like what are you now?
Yeah.
The league's a bit shitter. I don't know, but yeah, it's actually unheard of to have two 9-0 losses in such a short space of time. Like,
and still have a job.
Yeah, have a job.
Well, not only does he still have a job, but I've barely heard a bad word spoken about Hasenhüttl, and we certainly don't. And it was only a couple of episodes ago on the pod, it feels like, where we were gassing him up and having to field listener questions about like him going to a massive job, but he hasn't actually put Southampton into any sort of top half finishes since he's been at the club. They're sitting in 12th now. Yeah, they've had some good performances, but I mean, he really needs to lift. I don't know what kind of Austrian Teflon he's using, but like nothing seems to stick to him.
Well, no, sorry. He turned them around from like looking like a relegation prospect and had copying that 9-0 and then like sort of, producing a decent season in the end. So he gets credit for that. But if the end result is you're going to be mid-table forever and you get flogged 9-0 once a season, I think that can be better.
Well, maybe this is one of his tactics because they were down near the bottom last year and they lost 9-0 and were one of the best teams for the rest of the season. They're around mid-table and they lose 9-0 now. If they're one of the best teams for the rest of the season, they could end up in Europe.
It's
the slingshot. It's the slingshot. They get a low base and then just shoot up.
I don't know. I think Southampton are kind of in that mid-table and that's where they'll be. Like you can't have a team losing 9-0 and making it a serious challenge for Europe. It's just they're I don't think they're mentally tough enough, especially if they go behind, obviously, like that. So, and you see teams go down to 10 men all the time and they don't lose 9-0. So
well, yeah, Newcastle went down to 9 for 20 minutes and won.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah.
Few mentally tough teams. One team not known for their mental toughness, though, is Arsenal. And we just need to mention this game quickly. Given that we're an Australian podcast, we need to mention Matty Ryan's debut for Arsenal.
Huge performance.
George, how did he go? He
did real well. He didn't look that rusty at all. He made some saves where he needed to make them. He didn't have any like show-stopping saves, but he was actually tested quite a bit and sort of stood up to the test. And he was probably Arsenal's shining light.
Looked like he made at least 5 or 6 saves from the highlights that I watched.
I think the stats had down that he made 7 saves, and he was actually the highest statistically rated player on the field for the game. So he didn't officially get Premier League Man of the Match, but the SofaScore, the statistics website, rated him the best player on the field.
And to be fair to him, the goal they conceded in the first second was a complete deflection, and he had no chance with it. And it was just Cedric and the Arsenal defence just not being awake at the start of the game. So
roll holding on another planet. For that, like, wasn't on the man, wasn't going for the ball, just left his legs open and got megged. Like.
Bald fraud.
Yeah. So yeah. He'd be feeling pretty annoyed because he did put in a good performance, but I think it'll mean he'll stay in the team, I guess. So it'll be one to watch, and Europa League's probably coming up in a week or two, I think. So he'll be getting a run of games, which is good.
And how long's Bernd Leno out for? Just the one game?
I think it was just the one game, but yeah, it'd be tough on Matty to drop him after that performance.
Yeah, we just need Bernd Leno to have a fight with Mopé or get another red card or two, and Matty will be away. That's probably it for the this week's games, but there were a few quite good ones midweek that we should go back and talk about. Firstly, Brighton's first win over Liverpool since 1982. Liverpool's second successive home defeat after Burnley a week or so ago at Anfield. Boys, title defence over for Liverpool?
Well, they're playing City today, Colby. So I think
it's all on the line today. I would say, yeah.
If they don't beat City today, then yeah, the title run is over, and it's looking pretty dire at the moment in terms of, if you're not picking up wins against Brighton, then and obviously the week before as well, it doesn't bode well. I think their defensive frailties are sort of coming to the fore. Like they were hanging on with their makeshift, midfield and defense. But I guess everyone's going to say it's the forwards not scoring, but I think it's the whole balance of the team's a little bit off.
If only there was no elite level defender like Dashma available. I'm glad Damo was on. I've been waiting to drop that one in the chat. But, no, I think George is 100% right in that it's not just that you can see goals, and it's not. It affects the way they play out from the back, obviously, and it affects the confidence in midfield. And yeah, you've got your guys who are the best on the ball and best holding onto the ball and distributing it, now playing 20 yards further back. So it puts the whole team off. I'm curious, Colby, as to how you think they'll attack today, but maybe we'll talk about that later.
Well, Liverpool typically lift against big teams like this, as we know, and I think there's been a lot of chat about Liverpool sort of reverting back to really their level and where they were a couple of years ago, which is that they sort of lift against the big six teams because they match up quite well. The big six teams go after them, and then they struggle against the likes of Brighton and Burnley and teams that like to sit back.
Brighton play a bit more like a top six team than a Burnley. They're just not as good, but they still like to get the ball on the deck. So I would have thought Liverpool
very well in this game, Brighton. You got to give him that. Like I think two of their back three surely man of the match. Like they were just had a really good day out and Liverpool
managed to actually score for once. Yeah,
exactly. But Liverpool had like 5 of their record signings out in this game. Obviously, no Van Dijk, Alisson, Keita, Jota, Fabinho, and Mane all out for this one. Is that enough of an excuse, Damo, or should they still be putting away teams like Brighton?
Sorry about the sneeze.
I mean,
you would the headphones off. Wow.
You would think an elite level club would have the depth to deal with a range of injuries, but they've just been dismantled by injuries for one reason or another, and they haven't had the quality to step in and keep the same level of play. So I don't know if you can put it down to
run being over or
a couple of individuals being out, but I think, like Andy said before and George as well, everything is just out of whack because players are playing in positions that they shouldn't be. The whole team's just not in balance.
Yeah, and I guess they had a pretty serious run for like 3 seasons where that main core of the squad, they made the Champions League the year before. They came second to City. They won it, and there hasn't been much of a break. So those guys, that core of the squad, have been playing pretty hard and at a pretty elite level for 3 years, and sort of something's got to give a little bit. So I wouldn't write them off like completely, like the whole sort of, not dynasty, but that period where they've been elite. I wouldn't say that's over. I just think as Damo said, they've just had a shocking run of injuries, key players, and sort of guys have formed slightly dipped. So I wouldn't write them off, and I think today will be very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Liverpool on 40 points, sitting in 4th, still firmly in the top 4 race, scrapping out for the top 4. But we also saw in this round a scrap for relegation, Sheffield and West Brom 6-pointer if you've ever seen one. A must win for Sheffield, who are desperate to get some sort of a sniff of that miracle Premier League survival. Sheffield have now won 3 of their last 5 Premier League matches, as many as their last 27, but it's still 12 points off safety. Damo, is it possible?
Nah. It's possible for us to win the championship next season, but there's no way we're staying up.
I'm surprised to hear that. I don't know. I feel like this is one of those ones where the results are starting to match up to some of the performances. Like there were so many games early in the season that you thought Sheffield could have got a point from that or could have got something from it. If they can get some momentum now, I mean, the problem is now they're relying on another team above.
Yeah, I think it's too little, too late, and I've been saying all season that the performances don't reflect the amount of points that they were getting or the results they were getting, and I was saying I'm not worried the points will come, but they just didn't come soon enough. 12 points off safety. We're relying on teams like Brighton, Newcastle to drop points, Burnley to drop points, and these teams are going off and beating teams like Liverpool, Tottenham. So when that's happening, there's not really much hope of making up 12 points.
I would have thought Newcastle, but then they seem to have turned a corner all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think Sheffield United will finish last. I think they'll probably finish in 17th.
Second last.
Yeah.
Well, 17th is safe, so.
18th, sorry. 18th.
18th. Well, they're 4 points behind Fulham at the moment and 1 behind West Brom. And Fulham, there's now a gap between Fulham and Burnley at 17th and 18th, respectively, of 8 points. So even Fulham are starting to get drop behind, and especially not being able to get a win last night against West Ham.
Yeah, but at least Liverpool have got the magical 40 points. They're safe.
Staying up this season.
Do you think it'll even be 40 this year? Might not even be 40. So.
Oh, Liverpool are 40 now, so.
40 will probably get you,
mid-table.
Yeah.
A team who won't be getting 40 points is West Brom, though, boys. We should say a quick word about them. Is Big Sam leaving before the end of the season to keep his perfect record intact?
There'll be an asterisk on it. It'll be put an asterisk on the on this managerial run. Couldn't do enough business at the transfer window, COVID, Brexit, all the excuses you want. But
he'll definitely have Brexit. He'll definitely have Brexit on his list.
If ever there was a Brexit manager. West Brom have conceded 26 in 9 under Big Sam, and they conceded 26 in 13 under Slaven Bilic. So a few people out there saying that the club might have pulled the trigger a little bit too early on poor old Super Slav. West Brom are playing Spurs tonight, though, so they could be in with a chance to turn it all around. Spurs, meanwhile, during the week went down 1-0 to your Chelsea, George, thanks to a Jorginho penalty. Big Data Damo suggests that Spurs have overperformed their XG by more than 12 goals. Boys, is clinical finishing papering over the cracks of a broken style of football? George?
Damo's 100% right on this. I couldn't agree more. And the perfect example was the game against Chelsea, where I think they had 2 shots on target the whole game, and Vinicius had that header at the end of the game. But for the first 45 minutes, they didn't get past halfway. There was maybe 1 break to Son, and that was it. They didn't even try and attack. It was completely bonkers. They were playing at home. Chelsea's 3rd game with a new manager. Chelsea dominating possession, so you'd think Spurs would press high and put the pressure on and try and smash them on the break, but they did nothing. It was really bizarre, and I don't think I've seen a team so defeated before. In the first 10 minutes of the game, just with no idea, no interest, no passion. They
watched the Southampton game again.
Yeah. No, they had an excuse of a player send off. So, it's really bad, and it's the trend that's been. It's a consistent trend for the last sort of month or two, where they've been playing like this, and Son and Kane have been getting them out of jail with being clinical and outperforming their XG, because they've been taking their 2 or 3 chances a game and scoring, and it has been sort of covering over the way they've been playing football, and results have been papering over those cracks, and it was really, really evident in the game against Chelsea that style of play is you're on a harding to nothing, because you're not actually getting the ball. So you're sitting back the whole game waiting for your one chance. And if you don't have Harry Kane playing, then you lose your link man and your deadliest finisher. So Kane's been keeping them where they're at, but with him out, it's really, really evident.
This vindicated Damo XG chat. There's been a lot of XG hate this week coming across to the pod. What are your thoughts?
I mean, data is rendered useless without interpretation, and people just look at XG and go, "It's like the old we had more possession, so we should have won" kind of argument. But I mean, it's not a good indicator of who should have won the game. It's just a good indicator of the quality of chances that you're creating, and clearly Spurs aren't creating good quality chances. Yeah. And that's reflected in the amount of goals they've scored in their last 4 games. I think they've scored, they scored 5 goals in 4 minutes against Wickham, the bottom of the championship. But apart from that, they've really, really struggled to score goals for the better part of the last 4 weeks. And I think Mourinho lost 3 games in a row. Pochettino didn't lose 3 games in a row.
I think it's the first time he's lost 3 in a row as well.
So, a lot of things are going wrong at Spurs.
Andy, how many times are we going to find out that Jose's a fraud?
Well, I'll say,
how many more filters?
If we how many more fat filters? If we did live in the parallel universe where they continued that Spurs continued with this run of clinical finishing and bailing themselves out of games, that we would be saying that this is the Mourinho masterclass, and he's back, and look at how his teams always do this. That's how they play. They put pressure on, and then they catch everyone. So I don't think he's any more of a fraud than he has been for the last 5, 6, 7 seasons. But
15 years.
15 years. Since he last won that Champions League and that treble that doesn't really count.
They can't get bailed out because he won't even put Bale on.
Yeah.
Well, that was exactly
that one.
What was the quote from a reporter asked why he didn't play Bale, and he said, "Oh, that's a good question, but I'm not going to get you don't deserve the
That was the Tony Abbott refusal to answer questions. That's
just nod.
I haven't heard that tactic for a long time. No.
When he got asked if he'd go to his sister's wedding.
Boys, what's going on with Gareth Bale? I've read a report from Marca this week that Spurs and Mourinho have questioned his appetite to play football and don't want to extend his loan for next year. But Madrid are desperate to offload him because of his wages are so high. They need to get rid of him, but their only real hope was that Spurs were going to take him.
Yeah, there's no chance they're taking him. Is he washed though? That's the thing. I think he is, but I would like to see him get a run of games so we can conclusively say he's washed, because
he's got Inter Miami written all over him and all those golf courses in Florida.
All those golf courses, he's on the greens already.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I think, the problem is he came here and then London was locked down. So golf's no dice for golf. And then
what did I read today? It was Wales, golf, Madrid, Spurs in that order.
Football, Wales, golf, football.
Yeah, it hasn't been a good move, and I guess who actually thought it was ever going to work with him and Mourinho? Bale's just not the type of guy that Mourinho sort of would rely on, and he's not that sort of workhorse. Sacrificing for the team and running all day. He's a bit more of a luxury player, and those guys often fall out with Mourinho. So,
yeah, I think we just have to wait for the tell-all autobiography from Gareth Bale to find out really what was going on. And I think it's going to be, I fell out of love with football, but I didn't fall out of love with the money that was going to afford me my golfing retirement. So,
well, how long has he? He wouldn't have that much longer left on his contract. Probably one more season after this, I think. So, I think
And another
Madrid-
interesting note is that I'm pretty sure every single player in the Madrid first team squad signed a 10% wage cut last season due to hardships because of COVID, and Gareth Bale was the only person who refused to sign that. So if that's a big fuck you to Madrid, then I don't know what is. I mean, they had the perfect chance to let him go off to China. The start of last
Well, that's
season.
why I did it. That's why I told him to fuck you. That's why.
And for some reason, they just said, no, come back. We need you. And then they didn't play him anyway.
Yeah, they panicked because they weren't sure they had anyone to fill his gap in the squad, and they didn't sell him. They told him they would, and then he basically just sat on his ass and played golf last season, and yeah.
Boys, we've got an update on our More Than a Game Fantasy Premier League comp, MTAG FPL. Our own Jesse, who can't be on the pod this week, continues his sparkling form this season, retaining the overall competition lead by about 35 points. Not a lot in fantasy terms, but Jesse's still firmly at the top. However, this month, Jesse was beaten to the prize in January, and it's a new name who takes out the month's prize. This guy's name is Mace Karana. He takes out the prize by 13 points. So congrats to Mace. Get in touch with us to collect your monthly prize. We're not announcing this on social media, so you have to be listening to the pod.
Ooh.
Also, a reminder that last month's winner, Michael Emerson Jones, needs to collect his prize. Hasn't come forward, so.
Please report to Colby's house.
Please collect your trial from the cashier. Yeah.
If you're listening to the pod and you know Michael Emerson Jones, ask him firstly why he's not listening to the pod, and secondly, you can tell him to get in touch with us. Otherwise, we're just going to have to do something else with your prize. I don't know what we're going to do with it. If any listeners have any suggestions about what we should do, where we should send his prize, hit us up if you've got an idea. And we'll also, in the next couple of weeks, be restarting our A-League Survivor tipping competition. We might introduce rules this time, like actually enforce them, and we might introduce prize money. You never know. So that one will be back soon. So watch out to all of our social media channels for details of that one, and all those details will be in the notes to this podcast. But thanks
Colby,
again.
Can we just get a quick run through of what we think the results overnight might be in the Premier League? Obviously, there's a few big games. There's Spurs, West Brom, which we spoke about before, Liverpool, City, Sheffield United, Chelsea, and then Wolves versus Leicester. So they're all quite, important games for us on this pod, plus a few exciting games to watch. What do we think the results will be?
Well, I think that Liverpool and City is going to be a scoring draw, first of all. Any advances on that?
No, I think City will win 3-1.
Oof. And George, what's your prediction for Sheffield United, Chelsea?
I think both teams have trouble scoring, so I think it might be a 1-1. It won't be high scoring. There's no. If Timo Werner plays, Chelsea won't score.
You're off Werner now.
I mean, have you seen him? I've never seen a man so devoid of confidence in my life. So, yeah.
I think Leicester should do the business against Wolves in the form that Leicester are in, and Leicester have got a real sniff at a title challenge now, so they need to keep that going and get up over Wolves, which I think they can do. Leeds and Palace will be an interesting one, but you could see Palace's defense going either way. Like sometimes they defend brilliantly, and sometimes they just get carved open.
Yeah, it depends who turns up. But I think Palace. I think I would back Palace's defense in this one. So I think they might sneak a win.
Is biggest question though, is Mourinho going to get some more filters before the morning?
I think start making the memes now.
Yeah, Damo, you got to prepare them early because you know they're coming.
Let's start inflating him right now.
Pumping him up. I think we need to have like a fat filter sort of power rankings, Damo, and just who's the fattest manager of the week, and just like they just keep ratcheting up until they burst.
Tuchel's looking far too lean for me.
Yeah, I don't think the filters will work for him. I don't know if they'll work. He's flesh and bones.
He's like a grasshopper. He's so lean and like Of
One
all
thing
the
that
stupid
isn't
things that Twitter and like the soccer like memes produce, like the fab filters has got to be my favorite. Like, it's funny every single time. I haven't laughed any less since the very first one.
same. Everyone, I'm still like, yep, this is a fresh joke, even though
And
everyone else has probably moved on.
and for someone like
Poor
Frank, like
Poor
when Frank takes his next job, he has to like get a run of wins before they can decrease. Like he has to stay fat before he can shrink
Comes in
down.
fat.
Comes in fat.
Skinny filters.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I think so. I think that's what we should be doing. Like it's only after a couple of wins and then we can just show them slowly just coming back down to normal. All right. Well, so yeah, something that's not lean is our episode run time. So we'll leave it there for today, boys. Thanks all for joining us. Thank you all for listening. If you've enjoyed,
George is trying to show us the snow.
George is trying to show us the snow. I didn't know what he was trying to do with that camera angle. If you are listening to this on the podcast version, where 90% of our listeners still come from, then that was also on you. Jump onto our YouTube channel because the podcast version will be tightly edited. We've got a great editor on board helping us out at the moment, so the editing will be very tight, and you'll miss out on most of these shenanigans. But go onto the YouTube version if you want to
So
laugh.
I won't be on the podcast episode, will I?
You'll be on there. But a lot of the stuff before you jumped on the pod won't be on there, Andy.
Okay.
But if you've enjoyed the show today, we'd love it if you could give us a review on Apple Podcasts or just shout us out to your mates, shout us out on social media, like tell other people to listen to the pod, because that's why we do the pod.
And boys, I've just a quick one. I mean, the A-League's looking more exciting than the Premier League at the moment, I've got to say. So
big section in this podcast, George, about how good the A-League's been right at the top. We basically talked about how this is pretty much the best start to a season that we've seen in years, and so it's timely that you should say that.
For all those European listeners who've got BT Sport, I've just figured out A-League is on there in the morning. So there we go.
Get on and watch the highlights from this weekend if you're not across the A-League, because it's hotting up at the moment. There are just goals everywhere
and misses and
misses and misses, but like a lot of good stuff happened this weekend and in the past couple of weeks. You can also follow the pod on social media. As we said, we link to all of those in the show notes. You can follow us on YouTube if you want the live version that comes out a couple of days before the pod. But next week, we'll be back with match day 24 of the Premier League and A-League match week 8. But until then, enjoy the football.